All right, so we are in the second Sunday of this month's sermon series on prayer. Today we are talking about listening to God. Now, in preparation for this sermon series, I sent out a survey. Many of you answered, kind of a foundational sort of thing. The first question was this: do you believe, and show that first stat there, do you believe that God listens to all prayers? 99% of you said yes, overwhelmingly yes, you do believe that. That's fantastic. The second question was this: how has God spoken to you? 15% through an audible voice, warm spiritual presence, 63% through various signs, through music, through nature. All of these off the charts. I mean, God speaks in a variety of ways. Through a talking donkey, 1.5% of you communicate with God in a very unusual way. I kind of like put it out there and say, I wonder how God is speaking to you. But anyway, so that's really unique. Okay, next question. When you pray, what percentage of that time do you spend listening to God? Now, as I was writing this question, I all of a sudden felt very, very convicted because I am in the 5 to 25% range. And I could be better. And that's kind of where the most of us were, at 33%. About a third of us are in that range. Now, some of you really outstanding prayer folks are in the 90 to 100% range. That's fantastic. And so we got some work maybe to improve upon there. Now, as I begin, Evelyn Fitzgerald, who is in Rwanda with Zoe, she messaged me this morning, and she said, Pastor, I'm about to go to a worship service that is 2 hours long. And I messaged her back, and I said, as an act of solidarity, I will preach for 2 hours this morning. So here we go. Okay. The passage this morning is from 1 Samuel chapter 3. I am going to read for you one verse in that chapter, so let me set it up for you. Little Samuel, who's a little boy, he's a prophet, not yet, but he's a child, he's being called to be a prophet, okay? His mentor, his priest, his friend, Eli, who is much older, this is the guy that he looks up to, this is his role model. Okay, so one night Samuel is lying in bed, he hears someone calling him, he thinks it's Eli. He goes into Eli's room and says, what's up? You ready? Eli's like, no, that wasn't me. Go back and lay down, because I think God is speaking to you. And listen to the voice of God. And here's what happened next. Verse 10. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, speak, for your servant is listening. Amen. Today, there are 3 things that I want to say to you about listening to God. There are 3 things. You're welcome to write this down, type it in on your phone. You can tattoo it later to your arm so you never forget. There are 3 things I want to say to you. The first thing is this: we need to listen more than we talk. We need to listen more than we talk. This sermon on listening, this is going to be the most challenging one for you. The majority of us really, really struggle with this. 3 or 4 months ago, I was at a workshop, all-day workshop, and there was a speaker, and I'm going to be listening to this speaker for 7 hours, right? After 7 hours of listening to the same guy, I knew his speaking style really, really well. And it was utterly and completely unique. I had never heard anyone speak like this before in my life. And here's what he did. He could work both sides of the room better than anyone. So here's what he did. He'd go to one side of the room and he'd start talking, and he'd just start talking, and then like in mid-sentence, he would quit, and then he'd kind of waddle over to the other room, and he'd pull up his pants, because his pants were falling down the whole time, so he had to constantly pull his pants up. He'd move his shoulders around. He'd start talking again and finish the sentence. He'd settle in, start talking some more. This went on for 8 hours, okay? By that point, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most unique preaching style I have ever encountered. Then the question and answer portion of this thing happened. And this is where it got weird. I'm sitting on the front row, and somebody asked me a question. Let's pretend, now tell everyone who you are. You are?
My name's Lucas.
Your name's Lucas. Lucas asked me a question. You're going to be me in this experience. You ask a question. I'm standing up here. I'm the guy speaking. I come down. And while you're asking, I have a big, long question. He's talking to me. And this guy gets down right here to me. And you're talking, asking the question. And he's going, yep. Yep, and he is all up in my grill. I mean, all up, and he's attentive. And then he hears my question and goes, that is a great question. He waddles back up here, and then he proceeds to give me a 30-minute answer. As you were listening to God, what end of the spectrum, these are two extremes, what end of the spectrum are you closest to? My guess is that most of us here are closer to her end of things, and that we ask God questions we want God to speak to us, but yet we don't take any time to listen. And God's speaking, He's speaking, and we're looking around the room to see who we can talk to next. We're on our way to work. We're with our kids. We're doing other things. We're on Facebook. So, when Eli was speaking to Samuel, and Samuel was saying, yeah, someone's talking to me, Eli says this. He says, just go back and lay down. Be really quiet and still. And then say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So what you have here is some very intentional time. Samuel is being very quiet, he's being very still. He is making room for God to speak to him. You may have heard the story, this is like 100 years ago, when there wasn't like ice machines. And so like the way they would make ice up north is when ice came in the wintertime, you would cut a big block of ice out. You would put it in an ice storehouse. These are really thick walls, no air was allowed to come in. You would cover it with sawdust to preserve the ice for the summer months. Well, one day, the owner of this ice house was working in there, and he lost his watch. His watch fell off, and he couldn't find it anywhere among all the sawdust. He got his employees in there to search for it. They couldn't find it. Finally, his son was watching all of this unfold. And he says, I'm going to do something special for my dad. I'm going to go in there and find that watch. 30 minutes later, he comes out with the watch, and his father said, how did you do that? We had a dozen guys looking for my watch. He said, it was simple. I just went and laid down in the ice, and I just listened for the ticking of the clock. Well, what a brilliant thing. Listening to God requires that same kind of patience. It requires intentional time of stillness, not necessarily to hear an audible voice, but to just hear and feel the presence of God and what He's trying to say to you. The second point is this. We need to remember who you're listening to. A recent Barna stat said that 87% of Christians believe that sometimes God does not hear their prayers. 87%. Here's why I think that is. Show that next picture. I think we're expecting this. In a world where we're texting and calling and Facebook messaging and all kinds of stuff, we want clear, direct, concise answers. This is what we want. We want this. We want God to call us on the phone and say, yeah, I heard your prayer. Here's the answer. It's not that easy with God. Let me tell you why. Raise your hand if you saw the movie Jurassic World. Jurassic World. Oh, great movie. Dinosaurs fighting dinosaurs. Yes, awesome movie. Oh. Anyway, you have the choice to watch Jurassic World in either 2D, which is just on a flat screen, or in 3D, which means the dinosaurs are like jumping out at you and trying to eat you. Okay. Many of us prefer to watch a movie like that in 3D because we are 3D people. We live in 3D. We are 3D beings. This is the state we live in. There's a length, a height, and a width to everything we have here. Okay? God is not just bigger than us. We always say that God is so big. Well, God is really, really big, but it's not just that He's big. It's that He lives in a different realm of being. He is a four-dimensional being, meaning that He is not bound by space and time. Let's say that this yardstick here represents the beginning of world history and the end of world history. The beginning of the world and the end of the world. And we're, of course, are somewhere in the middle. Now, to us, being 3D beings, we want to communicate with God as though He is a human. We often say, listening to God is like just having coffee with God. We just are having a conversation. Well, that is a good way to look at it, but it's so much more complicated. Let's say that I were to tell you that yesterday I went skydiving while riding on the back of a giraffe. That would be shocking, right? You would say, oh my goodness, my pastor is literally insane. But God can, when he hears that, he would say, oh yeah, I saw that coming. Because he can see everything. He can look over, he can look under, he can look around it. He's like, I made this. I can see it all. So we need to remember that when we're trying to listen to God, we're trying to receive an answer from God, we can't expect a three-dimensional answer from a four-dimensional being. Here is how God communicates with us. God, who is looking at us like this, he says, oh, so-and-so was offered a new job. And they don't know if it's my will for them to take that job. And they're discerning, and they're wanting an answer. I am going to answer that prayer at this point in time. So then God takes his big godly fingers and he puts it in our three-dimensional world, and he swirls that finger around, and the clouds move. And you're on the beach, and you're praying. And behind those clouds is a rising sun. And it creates this beautiful, epic-looking sky with all of these multicolors. And you feel the presence of God. And you say, I just had an encounter with God, and now God has spoken to me, and I know whether or not to take that job. Or maybe God puts his finger in our world, and he changes the radio station, and all of a sudden you hear the right song that addresses the right moments. Or maybe it's as simple as him just kind of maneuvering in your heart. And you know all of a sudden in your heart what you have to do. Folks, if you are expecting a text from God, if you want clear and concise answers right away, you will never hear God's voice. We cannot expect three-dimensional answers from a four-dimensional God. God gives us answers in this way to increase our faith, to show us his beauty. And there are some things that we can't know immediately. And so God chooses to communicate in that way. Remember who you are listening for. The third point is this. Oh, God tells us things that we don't want to hear. That's a tough one. You know, I have heard many people say, I feel like God is telling me this, but clearly he's not, because of it's not the right season of life, or I just don't think I'm ready for it, up for it. But I hear, it's amazing how many of us try to reason through God's calling. But try to make excuses for what God is calling us to do. I remember in 2005, I was in college. Yes, your pastor is so young that he was in college 10 years ago. But I was in college 10 years ago, and Hurricane Katrina swept through Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. Our hearts were bursting. We wanted to help them. And so what we did is we got a mission team together during Christmas break, and we said, we're going to drive down there, we're going to do our best to help them. So this is like a 15-hour drive, and we decided to leave at 8 p.m. Great idea. So we're going to drive through tonight for 15 hours, and I think that I am the one driving the 15-passenger van. This is going to be fun. I'm going to drive the big van. It's going to be great. We're going to listen to tunes in the car. It's just going to be a big road trip fun. So I get there, and it turns out I'm not the one driving the van. I'm riding in the car behind the van, and the girl driving that car is someone I've never met before. And it's her boyfriend driving the van. To myself, I think, why aren't they why isn't he, why aren't they together? Why do I have to ride with her and I don't know her? So, I said, okay, it's a 15-hour drive. I can just get through this. I got my beach tunnel vision on. We're going down to Biloxi. And I'm thinking, if I can just get through this ride, I can just go walk on the beach for a day and then do the mission work. So I got my beach tunnel vision. Just get me to the beach. I can get through this ride. The journey starts. And we had the best conversation for like the first 15 minutes of that ride. It was incredible. We had the best conversation. Then we realized we have nothing else in common, and we're stuck in this car together for 15 hours. So nothing to say. So somewhere between like Atlanta and like Mobile, like some highway somewhere in Alabama. It's like 3 a.m. and I'm kind of got my head against the car and I'm asleep. and I begin hearing these quiet sobs from her side of the vehicle, and I wake up and I say, let me preface what I'm going to say here by also saying, college Russ was not a pastor yet. He was not very sensitive, and I didn't always know what to say at the right time. So I'm thinking, oh, good Lord, what is going on? All right. So I say, are you okay? She goes, yeah. Are you sure you're okay? No. I say, well, what's wrong? She goes, yeah, my boyfriend had a fight before the trip. So is that why I'm stuck in this car with you? Needless to say, the trip is not approved. So my tunnel vision is set. I am going to the beach. I am bound and determined. If I can just get through this, I can be foggy in the ocean, washing off all of this horrible trip. We make it. We finally get down there. We get our swim trunks on. All the big group of us, we're heading down to the beach. And we get there, and we see signs up and down the beach saying, no swimming in the ocean. I say, okay. And then we proceeded to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes trying to reason past this very definitive sign, thinking, well, maybe that doesn't apply to missioners. Or maybe it's an old sign. Or maybe there's maybe there's a section of the beach that we actually can swim on. At the end of the day, we didn't do it because there's no reasoning past the definitive nature of this sign. And as it turns out, we realized the next day the reason why that sign was up is because there's all this debris in the ocean, all this metallic debris that if we swam in it, it would have injured us. It was for our own benefit that we saw this sign. We needed that. And we just trusted, okay, maybe there's a good reason. Samuel received some really bad news that he didn't want to hear. His friend, his mentor, his role model, his priest, Eli, had some very wicked sons, and they were in line to be the next priest. They were in line to be blessed by God, to be holy and righteous people, except they weren't holy and righteous. And so God said, Samuel, Eli's sons are never going to make it into old age. My blessing is not upon them anymore. And then Samuel eventually had to tell Eli that. And that wasn't news that either one of them wanted to hear. But it was the right thing. You know what Eli said when he heard that news? He said, whatever God says is the best. I'll take it. And so when we listen to God, we have to be ready and willing to hear anything that God tells us. We have to be ready for that. Because it may not be what we want. So there takes some trust there. When I was like 3 or 4 years old, you know how adults are always asking kids, like, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, people started asking me that. And I said, well, what does my dad do? He said, preacher. I said, well, I want to be a preacher. Well, that lasted for about a year or two until I saw what being a preacher was like. And I saw how uncool my dad was. And I saw kind of the underbelly of ministry, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I vehemently denied ever wanting to be a preacher. And Leah and Eric here, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that very well. So we were, all my friends growing up, myself included, all the folks in my church, my family, we all knew, it's weird that you're here today, we all knew that I was called into the ministry. They would tease me about it all the time. Even Aaron and my other friends, they'd be like, you know you're going into the ministry, right? I said, no, I don't know that. So you know what I was going to do instead? Show that next picture. I made my middle school basketball team. This is not the picture of an athlete at all. I made my, look how golly gee, I made the team. And I never played at all. Never at all. But I made my middle school basketball team, and it filled my head with all of these dreams of playing in the NBA. I held on to those dreams for an embarrassingly long time. Like, I was like a junior in high school, and I was like, yep, I'm playing in the NBA. Eventually, one day I realized that people who don't make their high school team also don't play in the NBA. It's just like 100% that it doesn't happen. So then it wasn't the NBA. I was going to be a writer. I was always an A+ student in English. I was going to be a historian. I was going to do all these other things that I hadn't done, that I never really had dreams for, but anything other than being in ministry. Anything. anything. I knew it, but I was in denial and didn't want to receive that message from God. Then one day I was at a crossroads. I had to decide a major. I had to make a life decision. Where's my life going to go? So you know what happened? I finally broke down. I said, okay, I'm just going to listen to what God says. I'm pretty sure I know what he's going to say, but like on the odd chance that maybe he tells me, like, be a fireman or something. Just something, you know. So I listened to God, and sure enough, he said, ministry. Clearly ministry. So I had been saying that I was not going to be in ministry for many, many years, that I had so much pride that I didn't want to tell people that I was going into ministry. So I called my dad up one night. He's expecting me to pick a major, and I say, Dad, I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life. He goes, what? Because he knew I was called into ministry. I said, I'm going to be a Spanish translator. Son, are you sure about that? I said, yeah, Dad, I am. Because I could not tell him that I was going to major in Christianity. He said, son, can you really major in something that you made a D in? He said, it's my passion, Dad. Speaking Spanish is my passion. That's who I am. You know? I can barely master English. But anyway, so, after about an hour, I told him, I said, Dad, I'm going to go into the ministry. And of course, he was thrilled. And all my friends and my family had said, it's about time. When I finally opened up the lines of communication with God, it was as though I was answering all of these unheard voicemails throughout my whole life. It was like 1,000 unheard voicemails. Hey, Russ, this is God. I got some great news. You're going into the ministry. I'm so excited for you. I got big plans for you. Give me a call back. Hey, Russ, it's God. Didn't hear back from you. Just want to check and make sure you're going into the ministry. I'm so excited for you. Give me a call back. Hey, Russ, it's God. I have not heard back from you. I assume maybe you might be ignoring what I'm saying. But I'm telling you, this is going to be a good thing. Ministry is wonderful. You're going to love it. Give me a call back. Clearly, you are ignoring me, Russ, but you need to give me a call back. So, and they weren't actual voicemails, of course. What I began to see were all those moments throughout my life where I was feeling God's calling. All those sermons that I heard, and I said, God's calling me into ministry. All of those stirrings in my heart where I felt like I wanted to help people as a pastor. All of those songs on the radio that I feel like were speaking to me. All of those sunsets that I thought were for me. When I opened up those lines of communication, I began to see all the many years that God was speaking to me and trying to give me this message. I say all that to tell you this. My guess is that not one of you, not two of you, but many of you have not listened to God in a really long time. And my guess is that if you were to open up those lines of communication, you might discover that you have about 1,000 unheard voicemails. That you could probably look back and see all the many ways that God was trying to get your attention, all the many answered prayers, the many things that God was trying to say, hey, listen to me. I'm talking to you. This week, I want to do something. I want you to do something that I do every morning when I pray. And I don't do it enough. But I'm doing it some. But I want you to do this. In your prayers. And I know some of you are looking at me like, I've got kids, Russ. I can't find quiet time. Whatever time you can find. Say to God, speak, for your servant is listening. Don't say it once. Say it every day. Say it every moment you get a chance to think about it. Speak, for your servant is listening. Say it on the beach. Say it in the car as you're listening to the radio. Say it during these sermons. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Let's pray. Lord, you are so great and you are so wise. We can trust you, Father, where you know what is best, where you can see all of the future. Open up our hearts to minds. Help us to be willing to hear what you have to say to us. Help us to be patient, to hear your voice. Lord, speak, for your church now is listening. Amen.